you're almost here and I can feel you and now you can see me. Well, welcome back to Ruffin' It. This is about week number 7 that we have been together on the topic of boundaries. We're so excited that you are ready, set, go to go deeper and wider in fortifying those relationships that are meaningful to you. Sometimes we have to set real intentional boundaries. The question is, do we know how to say yes and when to say no, and how to say no and when to say yes? Both are necessary, and our responsibility has been, as it will remain, to enlarge and to catapult deep, resonating, healthy relationships for whosoever will. You know some of those whosoever wills. So let's make sure that they are here right now in this space and time with us immediately. So text someone, tag someone, share this space with them purposefully. Every time you come to any space with Life Empowerment Church, whether it's Ruffin' It, whether it's noonday prayer, whether it's Sunday service, or any special opportunity to receive knowledge and wisdom forward, we are certain to encourage and to implore you to be diligent and sharing that information with others in real time and or later on, because sometimes people are busy during the time that we are broadcasting this opportunity. And so when you place this opportunity right there on their chat log or right there on their social media page, it gives them access to the information later. So I implore you and I charge you again, make sure someone you know that would benefit from the information regarding boundaries and healthy boundaries in their relationships, that they have opportunity to receive this and these details from you through us. Let's make that happen. It's been a great time. I'm telling you, we are like on week number 7. And if I just jump right here to, I think, chapter 5 in the book that we have been going through, which is called Boundaries. And it is written by Cloud and Townsend. And there are 2 different versions. You see the first version right there on your screen, you should. And then the second version, it's like a red colored copy, and it looks something like this, right? So you have both of those opportunities to secure as part of your arsenal in your library and in your direct use in all of your relationships. So whether you are a parent, a grandparent, an auntie, an uncle, whether you are a sibling, a brother or sister, or whether you are in a romantic relationship, professional relationships, or neighbors, if you're breathing, you need to be here, because we can purposefully set our way forward in a way that reduces pain, allows others to know what we expect, and allows us to respect what others expect. And here in chapter 5, it's talking about the 10 laws of boundaries. And we went through these, and I sincerely pray that now you are going through them yourself in application. The law of sowing and reaping, that was excellent. Then you had the law of responsibility. You had the law of power. You had the law of respect. Knowing how to respect persons who set boundaries and allowing them to know how to respect you when you set boundaries. Sometimes, and we all can probably attest to this, one of the greatest fears that people have in setting boundaries is the loss of or the shift of a relationship. That's a real place. That's a commonly experienced concern that many people have. If I, then they will. Maybe if I do it that way, then they might still do it this way. And it's that contention of concern. And knowing how to speak the truth in love, as the scriptures would say, so that we can all grow up in all things, even unto Christ, who is the head of the church, it is imperative that we know how to be honest and to allow the process of effective communication to continue itself forward. Setting the boundary is one of the areas that needs to be addressed when it comes to healthy communication. But then knowing how to continue that relationship forward is also highly important. So we invite you right now to take an opportunity to give others a chance to subscribe and to like and to share this space. So all of those particular icons are going forward right behind me on the screen. We want others to be fortified, and you want them to be fortified too, because more than likely they're in your circle. And so you want to make sure that they're receiving the same level of depth and quality of applied wisdom in their journey too, because you're going to take it to them, and they'll have a chance to like and to subscribe and to share in the various places where we show up, like on Facebook, no pun intended, like on Facebook Live, and also like on YouTube. Thank you so much for being purposeful and intentional about that. So law number 5 was the law of motivation. Law number 6 was the law of evaluation. How are you able to assess the effectiveness of the boundary? How are you able to assess the heart of the constructive position of the boundary? How are you able to see if it was effective and if it needs to be restated or repostured? We have so many details that help to make that happen. Law number 7 says the law of proactivity. I'm setting these boundaries on the front end so that we won't have many issues in the middle and toward the end. The law of envy. Oh, people who have set boundaries in their own lives. Maybe a person is single and they decided to be fully committed and sold out to the single life, but then they find themselves envying the life of others who appear, quote unquote, to be having more fun in different types of relationships that they may encounter or have decided for their own lives to have that boundary set. Hey, therapist, welcome. Good to have you.
Good to be here.
I know it is. Good to have you smelling like a real man therapist. God bless you. I'm sorry, a real king. God bless you. Amen. Law number 9. Pardon me. That was a nice, healthy boundary I just implemented there. The law of activity. We have to be initiators. We can't be dormant and passive and then expecting that the fruit of our heart and our expectations are going to be caught and heard and respected. Initiation. The law of exposure. Well, that was real good too. That was number 10. So that's just chapter 5. And I think this book has about 8 chapters, if I'm not mistaken, that are so thorough. 8 is the 5th part. Good job. Yep. 16. Nope. Is it 16 chapters altogether? 8 or 16, double that. Yeah, I think it's like 16 chapters altogether in several sections. Yeah, this is great. Good job. Well, it's worth having as part of our arsenal. I thought it was like 8 altogether. It's like 16. That's amazing. You're just full of opportunity. Yep, full of opportunity to grow and to go deeper. So I'm excited to be here this week with this time with therapist Marcus. O stands for only him. No. O stands for Orlando. Marcus Orlando Ruffin. And I, as your life coach and pastor as well, we both are pastors, LaTerra Ruffin. And we sit here because we believe that this is good arsenal and good fruit and good food to be served and to be shared. Don't keep it to yourself. So we're here on chapter 7 or season 7 with us. That's so good, like season 7. It's like a big episode, 7. Right? On season 7 with us. Season 7, and I'm a completion. Season 7 with Ruffin It. And here we are together. Ready to dive in?
I'm ready to dive in.
Ready to dive in and go
hopefully
deeper.
You're ready to dive in.
We believe that they're ready to dive in too. That's why they're here.
Now,
so let's go.
One of the things we always make sure that we let people know, if you have questions, you can put those questions in the comment section on YouTube or on our Facebook page.
Yes.
Now, we have a watch party running on my Facebook page, one on Coach LaTerra's Facebook page, and then we'll be able to see if you put anything on our Life Empowerment Church page or YouTube. Now, as much as we encourage everybody to start watch parties, you may be on one of those. But if we're going to see your questions, we're going to need for you to find us on one of those platforms that we've already mentioned.
Those two, one of the two, either Facebook, Life Empowerment Facebook, or Life Empowerment YouTube. Those are the two places that we can easily extract your questions.
Yes. All right. Well, listen, we always like to start off with a principle that helps us to understand where we're working from. Because principles are true across the board, no matter your ethnicity, your age, demographic, geographic, it is true across the board. So here in Genesis, it reads this way, Genesis chapter 2, starting here, verse 21, and it reads, it says, and the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam, and he slept. And the flesh, it says, and closed up the flesh in its place. Verse
After he
22.
took one of the ribs.
Oh, did I leave that part out?
That's all right.
Oh,
because
okay.
your rib is beside you, that's why.
All right. So then verse 22, it says, then the rib, which the Lord God had taken from man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. Verse 23, it says, and Adam said, and flesh of my flesh. This is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. Right. She shall be called woman.
No. It says she shall be called, whoa, man. There's a difference.
Yes, there is a difference. Ahead. Because she shall be taken, because she was taken out of man. Verse 24, it says, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother
and his mother
and be joined to his wife, and they shall be one flesh.
Yeah, the King James Version said that he shall cleave.
Cleave.
You still cleaving?
I'm cleaving because I have left.
Oh, have you really? We're still working on that. That's the other side of roughing it.
You know, when you see this particular passage, most people are familiar with this passage because this is traditionally a wedding marriage type passage. So because this is a marriage wedding type passage, it gives us insight into this whole marital process, but I think it gives us insight into something that happens before the marriage begins. And this is, as you were saying, the leaving and cleaving process. So when we think about growing up, hold up, I have something in my throat.
You all right? You have the process of cleaving in your throat. You all right? It gets hard to talk about it, doesn't it? I know you miss Mom Sandra. God bless you. It's all right. You're still safe here. You all right? Okay.
So we talk about this leaving and cleaving process.
You get all choked up, I know.
Yes. Often you hear about the cleaving, but you don't hear about the leaving.
Don't say that again.
I said often you hear about the cleaving, but you don't hear about the leaving.
Tell us about that.
So when you think about the cleaving process, obviously we're talking about the husband and wife being close and establishing this bond and having this relationship. But what does the leaving look like?
What does the leaving look like?
Because when we think about the leaving and cleaving, you hear about the growing up process on the outside. You need to learn how to get a job before you get married. You want to make sure that you are, able to live independently on your own. So we talk about these sort of grown-up external processes to the leaving and cleaving, but we don't often talk about the internal processes that are necessary for the leaving in order for you to be able to cleave. Because if you don't leave properly, you may not be able to cleave properly.
That's good. If you don't leave properly, you may not be able to cleave properly.
Yes.
I'm going to send you back so you can leave properly. After 18 years. Woo, that is hilarious. Mom Sandra, if you're watching, here he comes. Okay, we're going to push the reset button and try it one more time. All right? Okay.
And so notice now, when we talk about the cleaving process, talking about all these adulthood type characteristics, but when we talk about the leaving process, you've got to look at what are the psychological, emotional, internal processes that are necessary for any individual to be able to leave properly.
That's a good statement. That's good.
And so when you're leaving, you're talking about loosening. You're talking about relinquishing.
Right. That's a good statement. Stay right there. Loosening and relinquishing. Those of you who have begun or you're still in the middle of, or maybe you're 20 years out as well, and you're trying to reevaluate, this is serious though, the effectiveness of how you have transitioned from your family of origin to your family of choice. And that gap, if you would, requires, as therapist Marcus O. Ruffin was saying, it requires some premeditated work before you actually step out the door.
Yes.
And so he's highlighting that there needs to be a loosening, and the other word you used was?
Relinquishing.
Oh, a relinquishing. Now, those words alone could probably sound very painful to many of us, inclusively speaking, who come from a very close-knit family of origin. So that process of of loosening and relinquishing and remodifying as well, and reconstructing the engagements, not shortchanging the depth of the love, but reassigning the actions and the time to give strength and momentum and allow space for development of now your family of choice. That's a process. That really is.
Yes. And because there is this leaving, which if you think about it, there's no other place that it really talks about this whole leaving. So you have spent X amount of years in this environment, growing,
your
learning, developing. And so now all of a sudden leaving is something that you don't really have a blueprint on because you've never had to do this before. Right? When you think about...
Yes. I agree with you, yes. I agree with you, no.
Okay.
Because some portions of that can happen for those of us who do leave and go far away for college. And so there is that reconstruction portion there.
Yes.
I can recall when I went away to college and I come home for breaks, talk about boundaries. You go to college, you have this level of independence, and you're owning your life. Then you come home, there are a different set of rules that have been placed there in that environment that are expected still to be followed, but you've shifted.
Yes.
And now having to hold those conversations about, hey, how do we now handle this since singing when I'm here at school? Here's how I handle my life, my independence. Now I'm here at home, talking to mommy, and do you still want me to tell you every time I leave the house? You still expect me home by a certain hour? Let's try to talk about that from a different perspective now. So the same thing being true, take that as a precursor to precursor. And so then some people do not come back home.
Yes.
And they may take employment or professions in different states outside of their family of origin. Some do come back home and may be in that environment again and now have to shift and know how to, especially if it's in a mesh situation, lots of love and connection. And now they may have to shift. They go into the fetal position before it's time to go. They may have to shift on how to leave from that permanency spot.
So those that are afforded to maybe go off to college, as you were saying, at a distance, right? Some people go to college at a local place, so they don't necessarily leave home. So for those that maybe don't have a blueprint, no prior experience, this can be a real reshaping of what these relationships look like because we're leaving. Now, we're not forsaking. We're leaving. We're not abandoning.
That's
We're
good.
leaving.
Right.
And those are some real distinctive parts to this.
Right.
So when we understand that this is forming a new relationship, that we're leaving, but we're not abandoning, it helps us to set up an awareness that, okay, some things are going to change, some things are going to look different, but this is for everybody. This isn't just for the person that is leaving. Everybody is having to make that adjustment, right? And so I can recall a time where...
I'm listening. You were sitting around the table, and you had to tell your mama something?
I was leaving. And you
were
want to
leaving?
share with the people what
happened?
was like?
About the table?
I mean, I don't mind telling it.
About the table? Sitting around the table?
Sometimes there's nothing like you.
Nothing like me
so,
telling.
yeah.
That's right. So what had happened was, I was visiting with their family in North Carolina, and this was a little bit before I think we were actually engaged. And when I would go to North Carolina, I stayed with a...
That's right, before we were engaged.
So talk about that mindset of knowing how to leave. That's a good example that we're going to share now. So I stayed with a couple in North Carolina. So Pam, if you're watching, mwah. So I would go over to their home in the day and spend time and activities. And so this particular day, we're having lunch around the table and we're talking. And my sister-in-law says to Pastor Marcus, she says, Mark, Mommy was offended with the situation that happened. And she stopped. And then Mom Ruffin, Mom Sandra says, yeah, Mark, I just wanted you to know that I was really hurt about something. Then she stopped talking, looks at Katina, and she says to Katina, oh, Katina, can you help me? So I'm like this, eating, looking like, gee, wonder what's happening here. Because it was very peaceful. It was an easy exchange, and there was clearly support pillars in one another emotionally, and then knowing how to chime in and pick up the conversation. It was also clear that it was a premeditated exchange. In case I need help, I need you to check in with me. It was great. It was very healthy. So in that regard, I felt safe even coming into this environment and being there and thinking futuristically. But I sure was wondering, gee, I wonder what they're talking about. And so then Katina picks it back up and says, Mom was hurt when she said these words to you and you responded as such. Here were Mom's words. I sure look forward to after you and LaTerra are married and I'm able to go to California anytime I want to and be with you all. And you told Mom, I'll have to check with LaTerra about that. That hurt my feelings. That hurt Mom's feelings. So I sat there, and so Pastor Marcus looks at his mom and says, really? And she says, yes, that just hurt me. She stops eating. So I'm wondering how this is going to unfold. If you're processing this even right now, I'm sure you have already gone forward and you can probably say or see what you would say, how this would unfold in your particular environment, how you would have handled it. But I'm telling you, it was handled so excellently, whether it was the initiation of the conversation as well as the response that Pastor Marcus gave to Mom. He says to her, well, Mom, seeing that when I get married to LaTerra, we're talking about the process of leaving, the process of cleaving before you walk out the door, before you even leave the door. We're talking about the mindset. We're talking about owning the family of choice while still loving the family of origin with healthy boundaries. He says, seeing that when I get married to LaTerra, I will not make sole decisions. What could I have said to you that would have helped you to understand that? Excellent. Mom sat there and said, what could you have said to me? I don't know, Mark. And here's where I felt like I could help to chime in. Because what had happened prior to that particular visit, Mom and Dad set healthy boundaries as to the fact that I would not stay at their home when I came to visit with them unmarried to Marcus, that I would stay at another family's home from the church. Well, this particular time, my flight was delayed, and I was coming in way after midnight. In respect of the boundaries for their home, I called ahead and said, here's what's happening with my flight. Is it possible that I may stay at your home for one night and then go to the home of the other family on the next day? The words I heard back from Mom Sandra were, let me check that out with my husband. So I brought up that example. Hear me, example. Got to use wisdom. I brought up that example right then and there. I said, I believe that Marcus, what they call him, Mark, I believe that Marcus is just highlighting and flowing in the example that has been set before him from this house. Here is the example. And I shared the details on what happened with the flight. And I said, that's all that I think he's doing. And I believe that it will serve us well as it has served you and Dad well in many capacities, as recently as the decision as to whether or not I could stay at the home for just one night and then return to the other family's home on the next day. If a family is not prepared for these adjustments or even know how to have effective communication, that seemingly small situation could have been a blow up. It could have been a forest fire, a California fire of unseen measures. But because each person came from a healthy posture and position to be heard and to hear and to work toward understanding and resolution forward. When the scripture says, speak the truth in love so we can grow up in all things, even unto Christ who's the head of the church. Prime example right there. Mom spoke her truth in love. Katina supported that truth in love from the pain perspective. Marcus shared his part on, hey, Seeing that I'm not going to make sole decisions, preparing to leave, preparing to cleave. How else could I have said that to you? I come in with a support example of great measures that had just happened from that home's example as a complement to everything that had been established already and said. So that's just one of our many examples on the mindset that needs to be owned and filtered through the Spirit of the Lord to know how to engage in those touchy exchanges that, when handled well and when handled from a heart of healthiness, can really prove itself to be a positive precedent through which all members of the scene can go through and find hope and healing all at the same time.
So when we talk about a boundary, let's just kind of remind ourselves that definition. It's anything that helps to differentiate you from someone else or show where you begin and end. Now, we've talked about that in prior sessions, but it's worth re-highlighting that information. So let us talk about common family boundary challenges.
CFBs, you got that? Some CFBs on the list. You got that?
So let's look at this first one where we talk about the financial boundary. Now, when you talk about leaving a family, now here's the thing. When we're talking about leaving, it's not necessarily that you're leaving because you are going to get married.
Right.
This is a healthy differentiation that needs to happen for you to go into full adulthood. This is not about marriage, although this applies to marriage. And so when you talk about being able to launch into a healthy adulthood,
good word.
it helps you to understand the financial boundary. Now remember, all this time you've been dependent upon your family. So now you're moving to independence. Hopefully at some point in that process there has been some kind of interdependence. But if there has not been some kind of interdependence, this will feel sometimes very shocking, sometimes maybe even abusive, all depend upon that link that you have to the dependence on the family, financially speaking. And this can be something that's on the upside or the downside. We've seen families, they talk about it in the book, where you have families that are moved on financially, but they are not able to sustain the lifestyle that they like. And so they're still somewhat dependent upon their family of origin to support their lifestyle. Now, they may be doing great things, they may be doing wonderful things, but this dependence sometimes creates a challenge for the boundary, because sometimes with money attachments comes power attachments.
That's good.
And sometimes when people feel like they have access to your financial status, they feel like they have power to the decision making that happens along those lines.
In your household, right.
And so you can find this on the upside. You can find this on the downside.
That's good.
And so on the downside, it's not so much that it's about me trying to maintain a lifestyle. It's the fact that I keep staying in trouble because I am maybe not financially responsible. Or I find myself constantly in debt, and so I'm dependent upon my family to get me out.
Pull me out,
I'm
right.
constantly in trouble, so my family has to bail me out. And so whether you're on the upside or the downside, the reality is this financial boundary has to be addressed, because part of you becoming an adult, a full-fledged adult, is your ability to be able to stand on your own. Because if you cannot stand on your own, there is still a degree of childhood that has been prolonged because financially
put that in the chat log. That's good. Prolonged childhood. Jesus.
Means that I am able to sustain myself outside of my family's involvement. That becomes very, very important. Now, granted, you have to understand that's the principle. Are there exceptions where somebody may be going through a tough time?
Certainly. Are
there exceptions in which I'm trying to make an advancement and I may need my parents' assistance?
Right.
Those are the exceptions. We're talking about where we've created a lifestyle, where this happens more often than not. And so you and I have to learn how to not just live within our means, but sometimes we have to be able to pay for our own failures. And so when something has gone wrong, sometimes we've got to be able to own that, take responsibility for that. Because if somebody is constantly bailing you out, you never feel the pain of your decisions. You never feel the effects and the consequences of your actions. And what happens is it provides such a cushion that we don't really learn from our mistakes because somebody gave us enough cushion to where we didn't learn the full effect. And sometimes that speaks to the reason why we find ourselves in this cyclical behavior.
That's
because we are constantly being bailed out
by somebody else,
financially.
right? That's excellent. I love that.
I thought you maybe had a story
Prolonged
and
childhood
example.
decisions.
You got any stories or examples?
I'm telling you. Oops. Continue on.
Now, listen, we love to have fun. I hope that you all have fun with us. Let's check to see if anybody has any questions. Do you?
I'm not seeing that there would be a
questions or
need for
anything
questions.
like
I
that?
think it's pretty
Okay.
clear cut.
All right. Well, let us keep going. Let's look here at the next one. You had something you were going to say?
I was telling you.
Oh, I had something on my list.
It's
All right.
good.
So the next one is the life management boundary. The life management boundary. Now, this is one in which, listen, you can have somebody that may be financially independent, but they are life management dependent. And so with this kind of person, they may have physically left home, but emotionally they are still residing at home.
That is good.
And so this is the type of person, or this can be the type of challenge in which, listen, you are not making the kind of emotional advancements that are necessary for you to have that kind of independence that you and I are called to have. You and I are responsible for assuring and ensuring. And so, listen, this is the kind of person, that they are somewhat still stuck in an adolescent phase. And here's what I mean by that. They're earning their own way, but they have no future plan. And so they have enough money to make the purchases for the things that are meaningful, the things that are important, the things that are usually in their immediate future. And so,
They're not thinking past
but
that.
here's the reality. They're not thinking past that. And sometimes what happens, you develop such a crutch. Now, remember, there's a difference between a hand up versus a crutch. And sometimes you can develop such a crutch that you don't learn how to stand on your own. And as much as your family should be a support, they should not be your main legs. And therefore,
support versus main legs. That's so good.
And therefore, what happens is if, let's say, your parents die and you haven't established that, then it can be a rude awakening. And sometimes it's simply because we didn't emotionally grow up. Because this is a part of managing life, not just managing finances, but having that life management component so that we can be mature and we can be adults in life. Let me take a little sip on that. Now, here's the reality. You will sometimes find this in very loving families. Won't be any serious problems. They have friendly environments, but sometimes, I think you were saying it earlier, they can be enmeshed. They can be so loving and so and such a bond that they have not recognized the importance of the person establishing themselves emotionally so that they have a certain space and place by which they are emotionally grown up and just not physically grown up, or just not financially grown up, but they are emotionally an adult. I like what this one quote out of the book, it says, they still have parental protection, and it is the parent's job to think about the future. Where are you in your adulting? Where are you in your adulthood? And being able to be emotionally mature emotionally responsible so that you have left the house. Remember, not forsaken, not abandoned, but I have left to a place to where I have enough emotional stability to where I can live outside of my home. Number 3, unrecognized family practices. Now, this part in the book, I really, really enjoyed. I really got a kick out of this one. I really thought that there were some real good components here. Here, we're going to show you some components by which you and I can assess unrecognized family practices. Unrecognized family practices. 1, consequences for irresponsible behavior. Number 2, confrontation on issues. Number 3, a lack of limits. When you look at these particular sub-points, what we're highlighting here is that these are sometimes family patterns that have happened in our family of origin. Growing up in our house, we may have grown up in a house where there really weren't consequences for irresponsible behavior. We may have grown up in a house in which people didn't really confront issues. Yeah, I knew such and such was mad at such and such, and we knew that such and such didn't like, the person at this time, but nobody said anything about it. It was like the pink elephant in the room.
No, they talked about it amongst themselves, but not to the persons.
Well, yeah. So that's a good point. They may have talked about it with everybody else, but not with the person. Maybe there was a family practice where there was not a lack on limits or a lack of limits. So, people didn't really have a curfew. They kind of ripped and ran all throughout the night. And so they could just kind of did whatever they wanted to do. There was no real kind of boundaries in the home. And so there really wasn't a lot of limits put in the home. I want to show you a few more because these are important. Another one is taking responsibility
For yourself.
How was resentment and envy or passivity addressed in the home? Think about this. How was secrecy practiced? We know this is what has happened. You take, for example, something like, let's say, incest, or something like where somebody was abused and nobody ever wants to address that. And it's like the family secret. Don't let it out. Don't tell anybody about it. We're ashamed about it. We're guilty. We feel this guilt about it. And what happens is when we've had these kind of family practices, the reality is that we grow up without an awareness of the deficits that these practices have cultivated in our lives. We are not aware of just how much this has affected what we consider to be normal, what we consider to be healthy, what we consider to be ways of interaction and engagement with people. And so then what happens, we grow up and we get married, or let's say not even get married, let's say we go off to college, as you were saying earlier, right? And so we begin to live with other people, and we bring these practices that are not healthy, and before you know it, we begin to somehow feel offended. Sometimes we feel disgraced that somebody would highlight, well, I heard that you were mad at such and such comes, and they now say, well, I heard that you were mad at me. And it's like, well, hold up, why did you tell that secret? I told that to you in confidence. But the reality is that because I have had some unhealthy practices with how we deal with issues, how we confront issues, then what happens, I bring that now into my adulthood. And the problem is that I don't recognize the unhealthiness of it.
Until a healthy person shows up.
Until a healthy
and knows
person
how
shows
to
up.
carefront. I like to use the word carefront, and they know how to carefront the situation, and they don't see it as ratting you out. They see it as an opportunity to, again, speak the truth in love. Come, let's reason together, and let's talk about these details.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have come to me. You should have gone to so-and-so. I felt like you weren't comfortable going to them, so I went to them, and now I'm saying, hey, why don't we all sit down and talk about it openly? When the scriptures are clear on that the real pattern is that person should have been encouraged to, hey, you know what, you're talking to the wrong person here. Here's how you can go to so-and-so about that. So once we are confronted with a different level of boundary, then we see, I've been in the dark for a long time.
And but sometimes it's hard for persons to see the value.
Certainly.
Because they've been taught another
different
value.
norm. Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes there's a time frame that they have to really adjust and get used to the healthiness that this provides because it's unfamiliar to them.
Right, and they could very well interpret the healthiness as unhealthy and betrayal.
Yes, yes.
Like that is not how you do things.
Yes,
because
yes.
their way from the family of origin has been so ingrained as this is norm.
And so being able to recognize when we talk about these family practices, these unrecognized family practices, you have to be able to say, okay, if this isn't good, this isn't working, something here has to change.
Yeah, right.
It's
Absolutely.
easy to point fingers back at your family and say, I wish you would have done this.
Right.
I wish somebody would have told
me this, right.
And all that usually doesn't take us where we really want to go.
Right, that's
And
so
so
good.
we have to begin to say, okay, what is it that I want? What is it that I need to change? What is it that I need to address? Whether my family may be on board with it or not. Now, this is where it may create some friction because now I begin to adopt some values and some practices that my family of origin
Totally outside
may
of the
not
norm for them.
be
Right,
familiar
exactly.
with, and they may feel like I'm going against the grain, I'm changing. You know, you feel like you're better than us. All these sort of things that are just underlining challenges to the changes for healthy practices.
You know, I this is a good place for a question because I happen to have grown up in an environment where discussing details was commonplace. Sharing how you feel, hearing the words "I'm sorry," resetting, I'm going again.
Yes.
There was nothing that was left off the table between me, Mommy, and Ronnie to talk about and or to discuss and to come to a place of resolve.
Yes.
So I learned that from my family of origin. How does a person who has no mapping on that come out from what is the mapping so that they're not interpreting a healthier way as betrayal?
I think part of that happens either in their relationships
With others? But
So
again, we're
somebody-
talking about somebody else that's bringing them a different way of exposure, of reasoning, and that could bring a pushback because that behavior has been trained in their mindset as you are betraying me.
And that's why I'm saying that sometimes that will happen through relationships
okay.
because there's enough sometimes investment in the relationship.
Good job that they can
in
feel
which
safe.
There's enough opportunity for growth without abandonment, forsaking, and kind of, what do you call that when a breakup? You know, so even if it's a friend, it's not necessarily even a romantic relationship, or even it's a coworker relationship. And
Certainly.
it's, you know, so you have that kind of
not
opportunity.
destroyed, right.
I think the other one can be through their own reading, right? Through their reading about relationships and reading about healthy family dynamics. I think another great place can be church, right? Places of worship, places where they're growing spiritually.
Those small
Someone
group
can
connections, building
have the
relationships.
opportunity to really
Right,
speak
that's
into
good, certainly.
that part of their life.
Certainly.
Sometimes through mentoring, right? They develop a mentor in their life, and so this person recognizes, hey, I see that there's this sort of deficit.
Gaps
Let
and
me
deficits.
speak to it. And so I think, but I would say most importantly, it's going to come through some relationship.
Certainly, that's
Some
good.
relationship. I think it's also important to recognize when we're talking about these unrecognized family dynamics, it is trying to recognize what is it that I'm really trying to get met? What's the underlying need in this moment? Because if I can find out what I'm really needing, I can, whether it's love, it's acceptance, maybe it's forgiveness. What is it that I really need? And when I can find that out, I can begin to now address the underlying need and not focus on just the tension or the problem itself. Because if I don't really understand the dynamics of what's happening, then it's going to be even more challenging for me to get beyond that and say, okay, even with that happening, what is it that I'm really needing in this moment? You know, it's interesting as I was thinking about some of this, and this was a thing I thought about. And you
Something
may
to do with
be
me.
able to.
Here we go. Go
you may
ahead.
be able to
fill in the pieces.
Get some
I can feel it.
enlightenment.
Go ahead.
You used to say something about when I would go home, and I don't know if this is still the case, but you would say, when I would go home, you said that I would become a different person.
That was a true statement.
That was a true statement. Is that still true?
Not to the same extent.
Not to this. But what was that? Because although I know that statement was said, I don't know that I ever had clarity on what looked like.
From your family. Yeah, you did. Just forgot we had this discussion.
Okay, maybe.
Already,
Okay.
For the sake of those who are in the back, we can share.
Enlighten me again.
Exactly, again, right?
Dear sister.
Well, okay, brother. So, as he was trying to cleave, we began this time talking about leaving and cleaving. In his cleaving time with his family of choice, i.e. me at the time, we did not have children, there was so much affection and attentiveness here in California. When we would go to his family of origin, and he's there in that environment with his mother and father, there was no touching. There was no, I'm sitting close to me. It was as if he was not comfortable with processing the duality of the different types of love that he housed and knowing how to appropriate it in the environment where those significant pieces were all together at once. So I, being healthy and able to recognize what's happening with him, I waited until we were back at the family of choice here in California. To have that discussion and to highlight the expressions of how it would happen. Now, only he can really address and say what he was thinking when he was around his mother, and I'm there too, and there's no closeness. I mean, he used to be a very affectionate person, just so all over me. And there, nope. It was like, I'll see her when we get back in California, and I'll think to myself, you ain't gonna see nothing when we get back in California. So you can speak to what was happening with you as part of the leaving and cleaving process. If you can, I mean, this is 18 years ago. I'm not sure if you're going to filter based upon your experience, your knowledge, your growth and development. Can you really give a true assessment of what was going on in your mind, or maybe what would have been going on in a person like you? Put it from a therapeutic perspective where he can help somebody else. So someone like that may have been thinking, what? Look, see that? See the engagement?
Yeah.
Someone like that may have been thinking what?
Well, here's the thing. I don't mind personally speaking.
Did you
to
recall, though? That's my thing. I'm not sure.
Well, that's the thing. I recall us having the conveation.
But you don't recall the action in the heart?
I didn't recall what was the issue. I just recall you saying it. And I said, well, I'm going to ask, like, right in the moment to be able to find out what that was. And now when you say it, I do recall us having a conversation around that point. But in terms of what was happening with me, I'm not really sure.
Knew it. Okay.
I'm not really sure.
Sorry we can't help you folks in the back. But really sure. Maybe someone like you. How about someone like you? What do you think may have been happening with them if they had this particular displayed action of pulling off the table all levels of affection of their wife or husband, in this case, could be either or, and they go back to their family of origin with that spouse, and everything's off the table. No sit next to the person. No talking in terms of the
romanticism.
All that.
Yeah.
All that. All this is gone. All of it just.
Yeah. You know, I think it could be a few things. One, I think it could be a new dynamic that they're having to walk in with their family. Because remember we were saying earlier that when you talk about this leaving and cleaving, right, it's forming a new relationship with everyone. Part of that is yourself. What am I going to look like on the leaving side? What am I going to look like on the cleaving side? And so being able to have some clarity about what's happening with you, I think is part of it. I think another part of it could be the simple fact that, you know, those are kind of special encounters.
What are special encounters?
The whole romanticism, you know what I mean? And so having a public family.
It's 18 years now, and you've missed it.
Oh, I missed it?
Because when we were in California, in church, in worship, on the front row at Victory, you're standing so close beside me, and you're singing with your arm around me. And in singing, you're saying things like this. LaTerra, I lift your name on high. You're changing the songs from God to me in service.
Yeah.
So it's not an issue of public, a PDA.
Yes. Okay.
That's not it.
Well, you know what? I'm going to have to think about this.
You don't have to. It's just
No,
thought
I'm
maybe
saying
help
that-
folks
yeah.
today.
Yeah,
Think
I
about it
just
for
said,
somebody
yeah.
else, what they're
Yeah.
thinking about, and you can help somebody in this day and time. God bless you.
Well, listen, we're looking to see if there are any questions here on
Not
our
on-
Ruffin It for
No.
today. I don't see that we have any questions, which is always fine, because we know that whether you're watching this live or you're watching this on the rebroadcast, we just appreciate the fact that you have come here so that your relationships can be strengthened, your relationships can be healthier,
Enhanced.
your relationships can
Solid,
be empowered.
yes.
All of those are important components.
Safe.
So that we have better functionality.
Absolutely.
Because these things don't necessarily come naturally. These are things that come because either we have revelation, we have insight, somebody has kind of studied this out and came to some awareness. And so all of these are pieces to the puzzle to be able to help us have better relationships. And that is what Ruffin It is all about, empowering you, empowering those around you, empowering the entire group, family, co-workers, doesn't matter what type of relationship, but being able to empower those so that you have a healthier dynamic. We hope that even if you're not the one leaving, but you're the one helping persons to leave, right? So you may be a mother or father and you're helping your son or daughter to leave. And here's the reality. They may have left years ago, but you're still helping them to leave. See, this is not.
Oh, you're not.
This is not about a time yet, right? Maybe you're not. And you recognize, hey,
Right. I need to
I'm
let
still,
them go.
I'm
Exactly.
still not letting them go.
I need to let them go.
And so this
Get them
is
back to their
healthy.
spouse.
Yeah. So this, and listen, they may not even be married, but they left the house. But you're still holding them hostage as if
They still
are
live there
still
and are responsible
a
for you
minor.
now. Like
Yes.
switching roles.
Yeah.
That's another topic.
Yeah, that's another topic.
But know
So-
this, you are made for relationships, and it is important
Yes.
that you establish the
Yes.
fact and own the fact that you are not an island.
Yes.
You need people, but you need to know how to need them.
Yes.
And how to need them in a healthy way and how to be needed in a healthy way. Boundaries help to make that happen. We strongly encourage you to secure this book on boundaries, when to say yes and when to say no, and how to take control of your life and help others to do the same. You must have places where you are connected in a healthy way. This book will help you to do it. I don't care how long-standing is that relationship. More than likely, there's some areas where you're thinking to yourself, I know I need to say this to so-and-so, and you need to know how to say it. This book will help you, and it will help you and them to be a space for one another where you are unconditionally loved with healthy boundaries along the way in specific pillar spots. We love you so much. We love you enough to keep showing up here on Thursdays on purpose, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Come around, sit up close, pull in, hear what needs to be heard, and then be bold about going through these necessary filters to have the better life that you deserve.
With that, we always want to end on a few notes and announcements. Once again, we want to encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We want you to click that bell icon so you can get the notifications when we go live.
That's right.
Listen, if you're watching us on Facebook, we want to like our Life Empowerment Church page. Listen, we want you to like, share, and follow.
Like, share, follow.
And so, listen, we appreciate you being here. A few more things that are happening this week. One, we have our
Friday prayer
that is happening tomorrow.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And tomorrow we are closing out our time for this week on the awesome and necessary topic of what? It's not enemies. It's the F word. Hello, it's the F word. That's right. It's faith and fighting the good fight of faith. And so far we've broken down faith into an acronym. The acronym of F is for fight, AI, and irrefutably, TH. And TH, we're going to talk about what you're going to do. We can't wait to be here with you tomorrow at the noonday time to close out this week on faith. It's a whole month of faith here at Life Empowerment Church. Each Sunday and Tuesday, our team has been going forward diligently and just enlarging faith perspectives and faith power. You help to make that happen here at Life Empowerment Church because those words land well into the harvest. You are the harvest, and those with you are the harvest too. Let's ensure that we are partnering with what God is doing in this great ministry. So many portals through which you can give. We have prepared several of those portals here for you. The Cash App helps the vision to stay alive. PayPal helps the vision to thrive. Giving online helps the vision to go forth. Sending funds in the mail, partnership in the mail, testifies that you believe in what God is doing here and what God has established for people to be enlarged and certified, is my word, on purpose. So you can look right there on the screen. Also, you can look on any of our portals, whether it's through Facebook or whether it's through YouTube, and you can see clearly online, also on our website, how to generously and consistently partner with the Heart of Heaven here at Life Empowerment Church. We are the pastors of Life Empowerment Church. Pastor Marcus O. Ruffin with the A through Z letters after his name, and me, Pastor LaTerra Ruffin, with the Z through A letters after my name. And those letters simply spell this, L-O-V-E. We love you. And we love you enough also to encourage you to be here on Sunday for a dynamic word on faith this Sunday. Can't wait for you to be here. 10:30 for prayer, 11 o'clock, the word of God is going to go forth with power. Also, we love you enough to tell you this. Be sure to vote after you've prayed. Pray to hear the heart of heaven, to discern outer righteousness and the purposes of God and what you're hearing from the potential candidates. Then the Spirit of the Lord will stir in you the right way in which you are to vote. While you're voting, we also want to make sure that you are registered to complete the census. It's 2020. This equips those who have responsibility to appropriate funds in several capacities to do so because you have been accounted for. Please make sure that you go to vote.org to confirm that you are registered to vote and also to take care of the 2020 census. We're responsible to make that happen. The Lord bless and keep you strong in him. May the Lord enlarge everything you've heard today to the place of quick application. May you not have come through this way and then leave the same way in which you've come, but may you purposefully own the information and then go through the Spirit of the Lord to apply wisdom in every capacity. Boundaries, 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 boundaries. Healthy, healthy, healthy relationships can be yours in every capacity in the faithful, awesome, incredible boundary setting name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Mwah.
We look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes.
God bless you.